All right, for the first time in at least 10 years, myself, Scott Sterno, back together with Ben Russo and Matt Urick from our days at Northern Star Radio, bringing to you Winded City Countdown, a new venture for the three of us as we try to count down the list that nobody cares about in Chicago sports. I think that's pretty fair to say, wouldn't you, gentlemen?
Sure. Hard to argue with, but yeah, sure. I mean, I hope somebody wants to listen to it.
We're counting down these lists so that our listeners don't have to think about it ever. We talk about this all the time. That's where this idea comes from. The three of us get together, we count down the list, and then we argue about it, and then we drink, and then we rehash it 2 days later. But at any rate, I'm Scott Sternal. On the video with me, Ben Russo, Matt Urick, and tonight we're going to be talking about the best and most memorable Chicago sports teams of our lifetime. So one of the rules that we've instituted for our list is that 1990 is the cutoff. So those of you that are going to throw a fit that the 1985 Chicago Bears aren't on our list, go fuck yourself. We weren't alive. Matt was 7 months removed from almost being a stain on his parents' carpet. Ben Russo over here, he was, how old were you, Ben? 6 months?
I was 7 months. I had confirmation from my parents that I was, in fact, sleeping when they raised that Lombardi.
Yeah, I was 10, almost 11 months old at that point.
Yeah.
And my dad claims that I sat on his lap. I don't remember. I was 11 months old. I'm 30. I can't remember what went on 5 minutes ago, let alone what happened when I was 11 months old.
That's a true story.
It is. It's a true story. You get old as bad. So we're going to hit that. We're going to hit our top 10. We'll talk about a couple of the teams one team in particular that didn't make the list that'll anger some people, I'm sure. We're going to talk a little bit about the Blackhawks. They have a 12-game winning streak. This feels like deja vu all over again. And then we're going to hit the AFC NFC Championship and discuss what's going to hit us this weekend because the Brady Manning love is all over the place.
Already started.
But we're going to talk about how the Bears get there in probably 2 years.
Even that push.
I wouldn't say probably 2 years. I think that's your
It
earliest you could possibly think about it. But we'll get into that.
For sure. So before I hit the list, you gentlemen have anything to add about our venture here and where we're going?
I think I speak for the three of us. It's exciting that we actually have decided to do this. It's something we've spoken and talked about for a handful of years, 4 or 5 years maybe. And like Scott said, we did this back in college, so it's been a long time. So I'm excited to get something consistent again, getting a chance to talk sports and talk sports with two of my best friends. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I think as we venture down the road, I think we can start introducing a little more fun, not necessarily sports-oriented topics into the top 10. But in the meantime, I mean, we're just three guys that like sports. None of us are world-renowned athletes trying to make our name and say, hey, we're better than everybody else. No, I mean, our Twitter handle says it the best. We're three fat guys who like sports. I think that pretty much explains it.
I like to think I'm smarter than everybody else.
We're the Smart Guy podcast.
No, I'm the smart guy part of this podcast. You're the writer guy of this podcast, and Ben's
the muscle.
Yeah.
I was gonna go with the bald part of our podcast. Notice he's wearing a hat. Well, you're wearing a hat too.
Yeah, I'm wearing a hat too.
So Ben,
no offense, Scott, you're looking a little thin up there. So.
Oh, I know I'm looking thin up there. My kids at us, they remind me every single day. So, all right. So let's hit it. Let's go 10-6 on the list. We'll start there, and then we'll get into the Blackhawks. So 10-6. One notable team missing from this list. We'll hit that first. The 2005 Chicago White Sox. Now, my philosophy on why I didn't want them in this top 10 and didn't vote them in this top 10 is I like the White Sox. They're fine. There are, redheaded half brother on the south side. They have a good stadium. They have good food. I've stolen a margarita from Matt at that stadium before.
I knew that was coming.
You did. But I don't want to see them win the World Series. I was rooting for Houston that year because I really I couldn't handle the Sox love. And as you both know, my dad and uncle, diehard Sox fans. So it's 11 years later, and my uncle on a weekly basis will remind me that the White Sox did, in fact, win that 2005 World Series. So that's why I didn't want them. Ben, why didn't you put this team on the list?
I just sort of like what you're saying. I mean, obviously they were a good team. I mean, we're both all three of us are Cubs fans. Had the Cubs won a World Series before them, I probably would have been a little okay with them winning it, but I mean, we know where we're at as far as our World Series drought. Seeing a team that plays, 10 miles south of Wrigley Field wasn't necessarily the best thing in the world, but they're clearly a great team, and for the record, there are a couple of other White Sox teams on the list, so it's not like we just completely forgot about them, but something we will get better at. All three of us are Cubs fans. My greatest memory isn't for one of our rivals to, not even rivals, just the team I don't cheer for in the city I live in winning wasn't necessarily the best thing to see. So
yeah, that's sort of the same for me. You guys had voted for other White Sox teams. I didn't vote for any. Honestly, the thought never even crossed my mind. I mean, it's sort of the same thing that I know I probably the three of us have to do a better job of that, of including White Sox things, because I don't want us to just alienate, that sort of the fandom and stuff. But honestly, the thought never crossed my mind, and all the other teams on this list, all the teams that I placed on the list, all mean more to me. So, I mean, it was a great accomplishment. They did something that no team in Chicago had done in, 90 years, whatever it was at the time, 80-some years. So, I mean, kudos to them, but honestly, it didn't matter to me.
Yeah, so that's enough talking about that misery right there. But we did, at 10, we had a three-way tie. Two of those teams were White Sox teams. Ben, you were the sole voter for the 2000 White Sox. I had the 93 White Sox, primarily because of my dad. And the 98 Cubs were voted on by two of us. I don't remember which two, but they rounded out the 10 slots. At 9, we had the 2008-2009 Blackhawks. That was the team before the first Cup. Then we had the 2012-2013 Blackhawks. That was the second Cup team. And tied at 7 was the 97-98 Bulls. That was one of my favorite Bulls teams. Not my favorite, obviously, based on our list here. And then at number 6, we had the 2001-2002 Chicago Bears. So our 6 through 10 is actually made up of 7 teams, not 5. Discuss, Matt. Start with you. Who on that list did you love?
All right, so a couple on that team. So I had voted for the 98 Cubs, and that was one of the first Cubs teams that I truly fell in love with. You had Woody had his 20 strikeout game. Sosa and McGuire had the home run chase. They went to the play-in game and stuff. So it was really cool. It was the first time they had been to the playoffs since '89 that year. So that team meant a lot to me. The 08-09 Hawks was one of the first teams that I really started to follow in terms of hockey. I know that Ben and I had gone to a game in 2007. I think that was the first Hawks game I'd ever gone to. So that team, that was really neat because, they went a lot further. They went to the Western Conference Finals that year, and nobody thought they were going to go that far. And then lastly on that list, the 01 Bears was one of my favorite Bears teams ever, which is hard to believe, but it was just fun. With Mike Brown, we talked about this a little bit earlier, Mike Brown had the back-to-back walk-off games with his interceptions, and it was also the first time I'd ever gone to a Bears game was that year with my dad, so that game or that season means a lot to me. Scott, what about you?
Well, I was telling Ben, the 97-98 Bulls, I love that team. And just the other morning, Saturday morning, my kid is up. It's 7:30 in the morning. Nothing's on TV. The Premier League hasn't started on NBC, which you guys both know I'm a big Premier League guy. I like watching that on my weekend mornings. But so I go to YouTube, and somebody out there on YouTube has the entire Game 7 from the 98 Western Conference Finals. Bulls Pacers, and I watched that game, and what's just stunning is you watch that game and the Bulls are down 19-5 early. The Pacers haven't missed a shot the entire game, They were something like 8 for 8 or 9 for 9 to start the game, and I couldn't help but laugh when they were the announcers. I think it was Jim Gray is on there, and he goes, "Yeah, if Dale Davis gets going again." Or not? Was it Dale Davis? Yeah,
No,
Dale Davis.
or was it? Did they have both? They had Dale and Antonio Davis.
It's Dale Davis, though. If he gets going on Kukoc inside early, they're going to have to go to the bench and get Rodman off the bench. And it stuns me to think that Dennis Rodman was our sixth man on that team. But you want to talk about, we look at the individual greatness, and I think that 97-98 year was Jordan's greatest accomplishment because he dragged that team to the title. If you remember, in that
team
final,
got old.
It was an old team, and if you remember in that finals, Pippen didn't play much in Game 6 in Utah.
My only thing, I actually didn't put that team on my list because it was still Jordan, it was still Pippen. Like, that team had to win. Otherwise...
But I feel like that was the only Bulls team I thought that had a chance to lose. Because I thought that Jazz team was so good that year. Like, they were a very, very good team. And, like, Malone was just at, like, peak Malone, even though he was old. But, I mean, up to that point, we'd seen Jordan and Pippen do it 5 times. So I guess it was really hard to think they would actually lose it. But I sort of remember being a 12-year-old at the time, and I actually thought then that they had a chance to lose.
Right.
That is also the series where in Game 3, Chicago beat Utah 96-54.
Right.
I mean, that's unbelievable. So that for me, though, that's the team on the list at number 7 that stands out. Just, you have Jordan's final shot. That Game 7 against the Pacers was ridiculous. Pippen with the hurt back and Jordan just dragging that team at the end. I mean, because that Jazz team, they had quite the formidable lineup that they brought to the table. I mean, Malone, Hornacek, Stockton, Russell, Shandon Anderson, Howard Isley, Antoine Carr, Greg Ostertag. I mean, Greg Foster, Jock Vaughn.
Greg Ostertag, good one.
Hey, Greg Ostertag in that playoff. Well, he did not have a bad playoff. He did a nice job of rebounding off the bench.
I feel like you're about to read me an Adrian Griffin stat line.
Well, like the only thing that Greg Ostertag did was
look at this line.
It's like Ostertag could get in there and be the same size as Luke Longley. Like, that's what it was. Like, Luke Longley and him canceled each other out.
All right, so just jumping in here, the team. I was actually the only person who voted for the 08-09 Blackhawks.
Yep.
And they were actually pretty high on my list. I want to say they were 5th or 6th. We got into hockey pretty young. I mean, we were in high school, and me and Scott really started getting into the Hawks. And we watched a lot of. They made the playoffs, but they weren't very good teams. And they went through that spell. They stopped in 2002. Was the last time they had made the playoffs before the 08-09 season. So you had that 6-7 year gap where you didn't make the playoffs. You had 2 21-year-old kids who were just playing out of their mind with Taze and Kane. This was before they had Hossa, and they made it all the way to the conference finals. It was kind of, to me, that was that statement season where it was like, we're on our way, just watch out. Obviously, you add Hossa, it's going to change even more, but that was such a good team. And then
that was a year too that didn't they fire Savard like 5-6 games into the year?
2 games.
Yeah.
2 or 3. I think it was like 1 and 2 or something like that. And then briefly, just going back to the Bears, probably my most memorable play from that season was the Keith Traylor interception. I mean, that was arguably the funniest thing I've ever seen watching a Bears game. Just watching him like trying to hand that ball off to somebody.
That's all he wanted to do was get rid of it.
Brown just behind him, pushing him, and then you show him on the sidelines just sucking air down. It was
I think
absolutely
he's
hilarious.
still out of breath from that run.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the 2002 Blackhawks team that you referenced, they went out in the first round in a 4-1 series to the St. Louis Blues. They won Game 1 at the Savvis Center in St. Louis, back when it was before they got the Scott Trade Center, and then they proceeded to lay 3 consecutive eggs in games 2 through 4, losing 2-0, 4-0, 1-0.
I mean, this is the NHL where they always had the joke where every team made the playoffs, so that's why that Hawks playoff streak, well, it was impressive. Like 2/3 of the league made the playoffs, so being below average still got you in. So that's why I said that 08-09 team was just kind of like the building block of like 7 years of misery to obviously what's turned into a dynasty. So
for sure. So let's segue. Great segue here into the current Blackhawks, the current state of the Blackhawks, winning their 12th in a row last night, defeating Nashville and their fraud of a goalie. All-star goalie Pekka Rinne, which, listen, I'll tell you, I'm glad Crawford's not going to the All-Star game. Weekend off for that guy. That guy has been a horse. The fact that he's not at the top of everybody's Vezina voting list right now is
there's
ridiculous.
like one guy who you could argue should be ahead of him.
Braden Holtby.
Holtby on Washington.
Yeah. But they've won 12 in a row, so a lot of turmoil in the offseason. We won't touch that with a 750-foot pole.
Nope.
We're just going to avoid that. We're going to pretend it didn't happen right now because, we're just going to do that. But here they are. They were rolling one line, really. Taves wasn't quite right for a bit there. And now here we are, mid-January, chugging towards the All-Star break, 12 in a row. Where is this team go? I mean, how does this compare to that 2012-2013 season when they started the season with 24 games without a regulation loss? Ben, what are your thoughts?
I think the first thing you look at that 12-13 year is it was 48 games, so they've already played more games than they played that year. I think 12 in a row, that's obviously quite an accomplishment. But if you look at it, it's 47 goals for, 23 goals against. So you're not just winning these games. I mean, you're absolutely destroying these games. I mean, there was a couple. I think there was a 6-1 game. They had a game where they scored 7 goals. Crawford just a couple shutouts, a lot of 1-goal games. I mean, and they're doing this with a lot of guys that, I mean, even if you're just an average Hawks fan, you've never heard of a lot of these guys that are out there. I mean, obviously Panarin is now going to starting to become more of a household name, but you got like Anisimov, who he's clearly playing at a higher level than what anybody expected. He was a key part of that Brandon Saad trade. It's just incredible to see how everything is playing out right now for that team. So 12 games in a row is absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's to go back like on Anisimov, like how long have the Hawks been trying to find that second line center? I mean, that's like the last 5-6 years. That's what everybody's talking about. There were the whole Hans Zeus was there and he stabilized it for a while. And then last year you had I'm blanking on his name right now. Vermette, when he came in on the trade, he helped stabilize it, but you knew he wasn't going to be sticking around. And
I wouldn't say that he stabilized it, considering that he got healthy scratch for a few games there because Q did coach Q things.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. And it seems like for the first time in a while that Kane is extremely comfortable on that line, and like Anisimov seems to know where he's going to be. Panarin knows where he's going to be. Like, that line is just – it's crazy to me how well that line is gelled. And the fact that Patrick Kane – because I looked at this earlier. I got it written down. That he's got 71 points coming into today. I think the next highest was like 59 or 58.
Mm-hmm. Jamie
30, yeah, 30 goals, 41 assists. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, the kid is just playing out of his mind. And then Crawford's won 9 straight games, 9 straight starts. It's amazing that this team, like, it's like they lost nothing from last year, when on paper coming into this year it was like, well, the Hawks will probably compete they'll get into the playoffs, but what are they really going to, they can be a one and done, maybe go to the second round or something. But I mean, the way they're playing right now, they look like a team good enough to win another Stanley Cup. Like, honestly, who do you think's better right now? I can't name anybody.
Well, I'm going to rain on your parade here a little bit, Matthew. Because that defense is scary to me. I'm frightened that...
Didn't we say that last year, though, too?
I was going to say.
We did.
We were throwing out 40-some-year-old defensemen last year.
We are, but we're doing it again now with... Now it's not just Michael Roosevelt. Now it's Michael Roosevelt and Rob Scuderi.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know how Rob Scuderi ended up on skates, but hey, whatever. More power to him.
Gustafson.
They're going to add somebody. We all know they're going to add somebody.
You would hope so. I've liked that Panik has had 2 goals in his last 2 games, and maybe he's gonna, he's another bottom 6 guy. That's the thing with the Hawks is we can talk about their depth, and everyone likes to point that Bowman didn't draft Taves, he didn't draft Kane, he didn't. He's not responsible for a lot of draft picks, but man, that guy has rebuilt that bottom 6 a few times.
Yeah, I mean it's like
he's a cap genius is what it comes down to.
Yeah, and we've seen it how many times? I mean, after 2010, you saw it after 2013. I mean, what would really make you think? I mean, everybody was doubting it again this year, and it's just like the Hawks just know how to make things work. And also, you look at it, Dano. I mean, he hasn't. How much has he played this year? Not that much. Correct?
Not much.
I mean, he's a guy that if he could figure it out. That's like acquiring. That's like making a trade. Again, he's another guy you could throw in on that bottom 6 that could possibly be a scorer. I mean,
and Kruger's supposed to come back for the postseason, so he'll be your 4th line center, which that's a nice add. There's that thought though that now the Hawks are approaching the Hawks in order to win a Stanley Cup this year are going to go into uncharted territory, which is. You've played essentially 5.5 seasons in 4. If they're going to do it right, I mean that's the territory you're going into. So my concern is just do they have the legs to do it? Do they have the defense to do it? And Corey Crawford, for as awesome as he's been, as we all know, it just takes one hot goalie to run into, and that ends your season. So, but I like where the Hawks are at. I think we should all be. Please, I thought this was a year they were going to have to fight for the playoffs, and now, here we go. So, all right, time to move on. We are on to our 5 through 2 on the list. Another nice little mix here. The number 5 on our list is the NFC champion and Super Bowl losers 2006-2007 Chicago Bears. At 4 is a team that probably one day could just not be on this list at all, but recent history dictates that they are, and that's the 2015 Chicago Cubs. The 3rd team on the list is the 2009-2010 Blackhawks, our first Stanley Cup winners since '61. The 2 is the team that we don't like talking about, but we will, the 2003 Chicago Cubs. Benjamin? I'm going to tell a story about a time that we were in college, and Game 7 happened, and I believe the last out was made by...
Paul Bacco.
Was it Paul Bacco?
I'm fairly certain, yes.
It's either him or Randall Simon, I believe.
No, Randall Simon hit a homer in the 8th, I'm pretty sure, so I don't think he came back up.
We'll take a look at this.
I'm like 90% sure it's Paul Bacco, but anyways, continue.
And I was a few rooms down because Ben had gone into a deep depression, which I don't blame him because I was there too. And as the last out was made, all I heard was the sound of a chair banging against our dorm room floor and Ben screaming no. So, Ben, I think you are the most qualified to discuss this. So, please, our number 2 team.
That was, yeah, I mean, obviously, you'll say it's somebody we don't want to talk about, but at the end of the day, that was still one of the best seasons, obviously, we've seen as the Cubs. I mean, obviously, it was our number 2 team. Yeah, they were 88-74. The record wasn't great, but, I mean, you remember this was Corey Patterson was like an all-world player. I thought he was voted an all-star, but I could be incorrect. But he was having an awesome season. He tore his ACL running through first base midseason, which led to the Aramis Ramirez, Kenny Lofton trade. And then, obviously, up 3-2. I think, were they up 3-1 or was it 3-2?
Against the Marlins, 3-1.
The Marlins. It was 3-1, yeah.
They lost game 1, they won games 2, 3, and 4, and then Beckett pitched a gem in 5 in Miami, and it's like, no big deal, we're just going to win it at Wrigley.
I mean, it's hard not to let a disappointing postseason drag you down, but, I mean, that pitching staff with Pryor, Wood, Zambrano, and remember, Zambrano and Pryor were 22 years old at that point. You had Matt Clement, You had added Aramis Ramirez. You still had Sosa. You had Alou. You had Lofton. I mean, it was a very likable team. It was a very good team. Obviously, not the best ending, but it is what it is. I will say the 2015 Chicago Cubs, while you say it may be a team that may not be on here, but just based off recent memory, I mean, you're talking about a team that had a 24-game improvement from the prior year.
Mm-hmm.
They won 97 games. They were the third best team in baseball, also the third best team in their division. Beating the Cardinals, in round one, beating the Pirates in that wild card game. I think that's a team that'll stay on a top 10 list for a while, truthfully. I mean, they're number 4. Maybe they don't deserve to be number 4 considering we have some championship teams, but is what it is. And then obviously just the 06 Bears, the Devin Hester season, as I like to call it. I mean, you go to the Super Bowl, this is still a Chicago Bears town. You're deserving to be that high even though you didn't win the Super Bowl. So,
Ben, can I finally get some dap on Devin Hester here? Remember, I was the only one that was excited about Devin Hester getting drafted, and everyone's like, "You're crazy! It's a waste of a pick."
He was a good pick. He was still a returner.
Yeah, I think the fact that they tried telling people he was a corner. Because remember, there was a game he played corner like at the end of the game, and he was so bad. Like he was just so fundamentally bad as a corner. I don't even know why they. Why they even tried.
It's hard to sit here and be like he wasn't a valuable draft pick because clearly he had an impact for a long, long time. But
yeah, he was just unreal. That year he was unreal. I mean, he was unreal for a long time. But the thing about him was I don't remember because I know that Monday night game against the Cardinals, that was the big one where you guys went to the bar and I couldn't get into the bar, so I had to watch it by myself. And the thing I remember about that is I don't know how many returns he had up to that point, but that's like to me the most symbolic one for me, even more than the Super Bowl one, which was awesome in its own right, which doesn't count, which is still weird that doesn't count towards his touchdown return total, but that kick return against Arizona that showed what that team was. They were so bad on offense, but like that defense, Urlacher had Urlacher was amazing that game. 20-some tackles. They were
with an asterisk.
Yeah, like it was just that team was so unreal. That defense was so good, so good. They knew how to take that ball away. That offense was just so pitiful. They could run the ball, but they turned the ball over all the time. Rex Grossman was terrible. Their receivers were, Musa Muhammad was all right, but for the most part, that offense was not an NFL offense. So the fact they even made it that far, I think that sort of makes that team even more like special to me for whatever reason because they were just so good defensively.
I will say though that Tommy Harris injury late in the season was just brutal. That defense just wasn't quite as dominant once Tommy Harris. Tommy Harris was awesome.
At his peak, Tommy Harris was unreal. That guy used to be able to get off the ball like nobody I've ever seen. He was so fast off the ball as a 3-tech. Like guys like that size shouldn't move as quick as he did. And I agree with you, Scott. That defense really sort of slowed down after he got hurt. And plus, it didn't help with Mike Brown getting hurt again and stuff. But man, that team was just so fun to watch.
For sure. And then, of course, that 2009-2010 Blackhawks team that when you watch that team, when you look back on that team, so young, so awesome, and the moment in the bar when Ben and I are the only two idiots jumping up and down, everyone's looking at us like we've lost our damn minds.
I remember you guys calling me, and like I was excited, but I was like far more excited for you guys because I knew how much like that meant to you guys because I was still a fairly I was a novice fan. I don't feel like I'm I don't need to prove my credentials to people in terms of my hockeyness, but like I understood what it meant for you guys. Like that moment was really awesome with that team.
Well, I think it says a lot too that Ben and I at different points in the late 90s and early 2000s defected to other teams because the Hawks were just so pitiful.
Well, you couldn't watch them on TV either, so that didn't help.
No, it was awful. No other way to put it. It was just simply awful. So, but yeah, there you go. So there's your 2 through 5. A lot of championship pedigree there. Teams that went deep. It's hard to get on board, obviously, for a team that is mediocre. Or lets you down, right? I mean, there's no way the 04 Cubs are ending up anywhere on this list, let alone in that type of a...
No.
That's another list for another day, the teams that disappointed us the most.
I have a feeling that'd be like basically 1 through 10 Cubs. So
Cubs, yeah.
I disagree, though, because how many seasons did you actually expect in our lifetime for the Cubs to be something, right? 04, 07, 08?
Yeah, the 08.
Yeah, I guess that was about it. Yeah, 07 and 08, especially 08. That was that year what did they win? Like, did they win 100, 101 or something?
They won 100
98
years.
No, they never won 100.
Oh.
They haven't won 100 since... Did they win 184?
I don't remember. I wasn't born yet.
See, that's why we don't talk about those teams on this show. That's why we don't do it. So, all right, moving on. We've got the NFC and the AFC Championship games this weekend. I love this Sunday. This is, we talk about divisional Sunday. 2 weeks ago, everyone was like, "Oh, Wild Card Sunday is the best." I'm like, "Yeah, Wild Card weekend's okay." But
it's football, so it's
fun. I like divisional round the best. But man, just this Sunday, 2 excellent games on the docket here. So let's hit it. Let's go AFC first.
All right, I got some nuggets and tidbits.
Nuggets and tidbits.
Okay, so here's what I got. So Brady and Manning, what is this, the 17th time that they have played together or played against each other? Brady has never beaten Peyton Manning on the road in the playoffs.
Interesting.
And
is this Peyton Manning with or without an arm?
That was Peyton Manning with arm.
Okay.
And then another interesting thing is this year's Super Bowl will be the 7th Super Bowl in the last 10 years to feature either Brady or Manning, which is just crazy to think. I mean, you make the joke about Manning's arm, and it is very interesting to see like this Manning because it's really weird, really odd to watch Manning like not be Manning. And I saw another interesting stat that Brady has thrown more touchdowns in Denver this year than Manning.
Yeah,
I think Brady threw either 2 or 3 when they played, and Manning threw 1, and Manning's only thrown 1 all year in Denver, which is astounding. Like that's just unfathomable to me that's Peyton Manning, but I guess that's what he is now. Is he a game manager? I mean, that defense is good enough. I think that defense can hold Brady, but can they score? That's the biggest question mark.
Yeah, I don't know that the Manning sliding down, not getting touched, and then throwing the ball offense is really going to
that savvy vet. That was that savvy vet move.
We joke, but it really is when you consider that he didn't hear a whistle and he's like, "Cool, I'm just gonna get up and chuck this ball." But
I saw something the other day. He told Emmanuel Sanders that.
He's lying.
No.
He is bullshitting.
This is apparently. I heard this early in the week. Now
I heard it too, but he's lying.
There's no way he was like.
Why would Peyton Manning lie to me? Why would Peyton Manning lie to me?
I don't know. Why would Peyton Manning's wife have HGH delivered to the house and Manning never talk about it? I don't know. But that's a thing that occurred, and we're just not going to talk about it.
That's very true.
All right. I think it's fair of me to question.
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I think all jokes aside, I mean, there's people. I'm going to say that I don't see any way Denver wins this game. I'm not saying that they can't win, but they're not going to be able to outscore.
Yeah, it's just like
so.
You look at the matchup on the surface. It's like it's so obvious that the Patriots are better, and you got Gronk, if Edelman's healthy, and Amendola, and one of these like random running backs that they find that can be productive all the time. But it's like that Denver defense is really good, but it's like you said,
that's their hope.
Yeah, that's
where their hope lies. Is that defense needs to show up. I mean, Scott, you said the other day, can Denver score 30 points?
No.
Can Denver score 20 points?
And even then, it's like
that's what I mean.
It's
like,
enough. Yeah.
I don't think it is, and I don't think Denver's defense is holding them to less than 20 points.
Here's my counter to everybody that's saying Denver can't win this game. Denver can't win this game. This Patriots team has been healthy before in the playoffs. Not this particular one. And then went and laid an egg at home to Mark Sanchez.
Yeah.
right? And Mark Sanchez, maybe not a noodle arm bite like Manning, but had to make 3 or 4 throws, and they ran the ball, and they played tough defense, and they hit Brady in the mouth all day, and all of a sudden we're sitting here going, wait a minute, are the Jets really going to go to the Super Bowl with Mark Sanchez? That was a legitimate concern that we all had to have. That we were not really a concern. It would have been awesome because we all would have gotten to sit down and go, hey, we get to bet against Mark Sanchez in the Super Bowl, which is always a wonderful idea.
But the Patriots won, so...
No, the Patriots lost to Sanchez, though, in that... I mean, that was the divisional round.
Divisional, yeah.
That was the Bart Scott can't wait game, wasn't it? After that game, Bart Scott got on there. He was like, can't wait, and that because about the Steelers.
Oh yeah, that was that year. Was that when the Steelers played
Arizona?
Okay, I couldn't remember if that was that one or the one where they played Green Bay.
Or was it when they played Green Bay? It was obviously one of those two. I think it was the year they played Green Bay. Now that you say that. So, anyways, predictions. Ben, who do you got this weekend?
I mean, I'll be rooting for Manning, but I think the Patriots win. I'm not saying they're going to blow them out, but I think you're going to see. I don't think Denver has enough to keep up with New England's offense. I mean, I saw Brady right now is releasing the ball. I think it's 1.94 seconds. I mean, that kind of stuff neutralizes the pass rush that the Broncos are going to have. Obviously, they have 2 great cornerbacks, but actually, they don't. Isn't Chris Harris banged up?
Yeah, I think he's sort of like questionable. They don't have an injury report out yet, but I think, or maybe they do, but I don't think his status has been confirmed yet. But I'm with Ben. I'd like to see Manning do another one, but I also respect Tom Brady a ton, and I like Tom Brady, so. I think it's a game that could be close for 3 quarters, but then I think Brady and that New England offense it's just too much. I think it's going to be probably, I don't know, I think New England can win by 2 scores. Scott?
I tend to agree. It's so hard to talk myself into Peyton Manning and that noodle arm. I just can't do it. I mean, unless he's going to inject himself with some of his wife's HGH on Saturday night. And get that arm going before that's it though, right? Like I can't foresee another. I just can't foresee there being a Manning and Broncos victory here, unless Brady gets hit in the mouth repeatedly and they, if I have to hear the word Steve Garoppolo has entered the game, then maybe we'll have that conversation.
I hope not, because it's Jimmy.
Oh, there you go. There it is.
Steve's his dad.
Yeah.
Whatever. If I have to hear either Steve or Jimmy Garoppolo is entering this game, we've got a problem. NFC side. Carolina, Cam Newton.
I have no idea.
I don't either.
I think this is going to be the best game. I mean, hands down, I think it's going to be the best game. That Arizona offense and the things they can do, and those receivers, and if Larry Fitzgerald's on like he is, and if David Johnson, I mean, he didn't really have that good of a game against Green Bay, but I think they get that running game going. But the Carolina defense, Luke Kuechly's like Brian Urlacher Part 2. I mean, he's unbelievable. And real quick on the Arizona, I did not realize this. Dwight Freeney played 11 games for them this year. He had 8 sacks. Like that.
Yeah, he's still good.
Yeah, he was amazing. Amazing is probably too strong of a word, but I thought he played fantastic the other night against Green Bay. He was really, really good. So I think it's going to be the best game of the weekend out of 2 games. I think it's going to be a close one. If I had to pick right now, I'm leading Arizona, but it really wouldn't surprise me either team.
Ben, what do you got?
I'm not kidding when I tell you I wrote Panthers, scribbled it out, wrote Cardinals, scribbled it out, wrote Panthers, scribbled it out. God, this is like, I have no... Part of me wants to go with the offense, but after seeing Carson Palmer last week, I don't know. I don't think he can do it again. I don't think he can do that again. I think he'll be better. I think Tyrann Mathieu is, with him not being out there, kills them. I think that defense on Carolina is the difference at this point with what they have, at linebacker and at as far as defensive backs go. So I'll go with Panthers, but I'm like, ask me in 5 minutes and I might be back on the Cardinals. But I think right now I'm going to go Panthers.
Matt, thoughts?
I think this game isn't going to be as good as we think. I think. I mean, I watched that Arizona team last weekend. I watched almost all of that game on Saturday night, and I walked away going, the Bears beat the Packers, right? And I know the stakes weren't the same, but the Bears beat the Packers in Green Bay, and Arizona had to go to overtime. And even without the 2 Hail Marys, I mean, that was a one-score game, and Carolina blew the doors off of Seattle in the first half. And granted, did Seattle come back and make it a one-score game? Sure, but there's a little bit of taking the foot off the pedal. And because Seattle came back, I get the feeling that all the Panthers have been reminded of in practice this week is you're not that good. You're not that good, because if you were, we would have won that game 45-0 and just made Seattle laughing stock. I think Carolina's going to come out. I think it's going to get to halftime, and it's going to be sitting somewhere like 24-10, and it's going to be what does Arizona have to do to get back into this? And then there's going to be a defensive play, and then a cam play, and we're going to be sitting here early in the fourth quarter going, how many points are we favoring Carolina by over New England in this Super Bowl? Because Carolina is going to look that awesome. I honestly, I think Carolina wins this thing going away like 45-10, 45-17.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that far, but
but hey, to each their own, man.
We'll see what happens. We'll talk about it on the podcast Monday and see how wrong I actually was, which I'm notorious for being wrong. So that's right, as we all know from the Super Contest this year. All right, so let's name the number one. We've got a whole offseason to talk about the Bears and that awfulness of the end of the season where it just didn't feel like the team could put anything together. But hope springs eternal as we start the new league year after the Super Bowl. So, number one, I do a drum roll, but is there
it should
really
be pretty obvious.
Yeah.
the greatest single season team of all time? 72-10, Michael Jordan, MVP, his first year back from the year-and-a-half retirement. We're talking about the 95-96 Bulls. That roster was unbelievable. Benjamin, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I mean, you said it right there. Just, this was the 97-98 team, but 2 years younger. So they killed everybody. My greatest memory of that team, unfortunately, was a game that we attended. I think they had 2 home losses that whole year.
Yeah. Hold on, I got it written down. Yep, 2 home losses.
39-2.
And me and Scott were at one of them against the Miami Heat.
No, it wasn't the Heat. It was like the Hornets or something like that.
No, it was Dan Marley, wasn't it? Dan Marley.
Then that you're thinking of a different game, because the only 2 home losses they had that year was they lost to the Hornets when they couldn't get a putback in at the buzzer, and then they lost that, I think it was the 81st game of the season at home to the Pacers when Pippen fouled.
I thought that was in Indiana.
No, that was in Chicago. That was the other loss. Let's see here. I've got it here. 2 home games losing to the Hornets and their final home game against the Pacers.
Okay. I do remember that play. I just thought it was in Indiana.
So there you go. But either way, terrible loss there to Indiana to make it the 10th loss of the season. And 73-9 would have been nice.
Yeah, but it doesn't. 73-9 doesn't have the same cool ring to it, right?
Agreed.
72-10 just sounds way cooler.
Yeah, again, you just said the depth. I mean, you had I believe Kukoc was your 6th man that year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had my personal favorite, other than Jordan, was Ron Harper, had his jersey, good old number 9.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had Steve Kerr off the bench, you had Longley, you had so many guys giving you whatever minutes they played were quality minutes. I mean, Randy Brown, was coming off the bench. It was just a great team. It was, like you said, the greatest single season team. I think you're going to find. I mean, I know you had the 19-0 Patriots, but as far as Chicago,
18-1 Patriots, Benjamin. 18-1.
But it was just an unbelievable team. I mean, just fun to watch. Just crushed everybody. They actually had an article on there today, I think, on the Booyahs had it, how Jordan came into camp saying that every game they were going to play every game like a playoff game, and the result is 72-10. So I mean, that just tells you how great all those guys were. Really,
they only lost 2 games in a row one time that year, and it was a back-to-back on the West Coast trip when they lost to Phoenix and Denver during that run, which was ridiculous.
And they did not lose a game in the month of January.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that team, like, for me, it's another one of those things that this team has, like, personal significance to me. Obviously, they're a really good team, but it was like one of the first, because, like, the first 3 championships, we were still pretty young. I very vaguely remember the 93 championship, but, like, this was where my fandom for the Bulls of Jordan and Pippen, and I was with you, Ben. I loved Ron Harper and all that, and like the team was just, they were so fun to watch. They were so good. They were so dominant. I mean, there was no doubt whatsoever that they were going to go into Seattle and just beat up that team. I mean, and that Seattle team was fun. That was a good team. Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, Detlef Schrempf. I mean, that was a solid. Nate McMillan. Like, it's a fun team. Like, that was when I really, really fell in love with the NBA. It was just, and that was during that time that the NBA was like really peaking. I don't know if Magic was. I don't think Magic was still playing then. Bird was gone, but I mean, you had these emerging stars like a Gary Payton, Shaq. Patrick Ewing was still doing his thing. Barkley was still doing his thing. I mean, that was a really fun time. And for that team to be that good, that dominant, there was no – I think all 3 of us, right? All 3 of us picked that as our number 1 team, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think so. No, Scott, you had the Blackhawks.
I did. Yeah, I had the Hawks only because the drought they ended was really – I felt really significant. The Bulls lost 9 games by a combined 46 points, if I'm adding correctly. And they had that one terrible loss, that Sunday afternoon loss to the Knicks at the Garden, where they lost by 42 or 32 points. So
have lost in all this is they lost 3 games in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, they swept the first.
And one of them was an overtime loss to the Knicks.
Overtime to the Knicks. And then 2 to the Supersonics.
2 to the Sonics, yeah.
So, great squad. They get our number 1. I know everybody out there, not the upset of the century that they thought it could be, but, we've done it for you, though, folks. If this is your first, this is the first episode, and if you were thinking, man, you know what I really need to do this weekend is I need to get my list of 10 best Chicago sports teams together. Well, don't worry about it. We did it for you. We did it for you. So, closing thoughts. Who wants to take the first closing thought? Matthew, let's go to you. Closing thought.
Closing thought in general, I guess if we're talking as a podcast as a whole, I thought this was a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to like a little more like out there sort of list that we could do too. Obviously we're going to keep a lot of this sports based, but I think a lot of times when we were in college, some of the best shows that we did were ones where we just went off the rails and talked about odd, strange things, and I think there's a place for that too. But I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be nice to get into a groove and do this and talk with you guys. So I'm excited moving forward.
Benjamin.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's just this is our first run with this, so. Bear with us if you don't think we're as good as we were. We will get better. But either way, it's just it's fun to do these kinds of lists. This is the kind of stuff that you sit around and drink and debate all the time. So just to do these regularly, I think will be fun. And I agree. I mean, once we start, eventually you're going to cover everything in sports. So once we start going off the beaten path, I think it'll be a little more entertaining as well. So just looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun.
I'd like to just say that I think our podcast is like John Scott's all-star candidacy. Right? We're not very good, but the people are going to like us anyways. They might trade us to Montreal to make sure that we don't exist anymore, but then Apple's going to come to their senses and be like, well, if we don't let these guys have a podcast, then we can't let anybody have a podcast. So let's go with that. I'm going to dedicate this show to John Scott. That guy, 5 career goals, is it?
Oh God, is it that many?
I thought that's what I read today. 5 career goals, maybe 14 career points.
I think his career points are like single digits, but anyways.
Oh, he's terrible. But you know what? He is the captain for your Pacific team. I'm really excited if they're going to put a patch on his jersey or not on for All-Star Weekend. We're in unprecedented.
I don't think it makes a difference.
We're in unprecedented territory here. Not unprecedented because we had 3 guys that have been traded right before the All-Star game before. And you know what was really fun? I saw on Deadspin the other day. Craig Hodges was in the 92 three-point contest, but he wasn't on the Bulls anymore. But he had won the 91 three-point contest, and the NBA let him shoot in the contest, and they just gave him a generic NBA jersey. You have to go watch this video. It's hilarious. Like, he gets up there, and he's just wearing this white jersey that has the NBA logo on the front, and that's it. So.
Oh yeah, I just saw a picture of it.
There it is.
It's good.
So I'd like to think we're a step above Craig Hodges.
Somewhere between John Scott and Craig Hodges.
Let's go with that. And our goal is here eventually to be Judd Bushler. Our bud Judd. All right. So for Ben Russo and Matt Urich, I'm Scott Sterno. Thank you for listening to our first episode. Our next one we will be recording on Monday, so you'll be able to get that in iTunes. If you want to stay up late and wait for the download, that should be Monday night, or get it Tuesday morning on your way to work.